Calling to order meeting of the ASRB on Monday, December the 16th at 4:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Chair Lindsay. Vice Chair Kamra. Member Middleman.
Yes.
I'll give him a second.
Member Taft in the back.
Is it?
And Member Taft. Thank you.
You. Just a reminder, anyone in the room, please remember to sign in on the sign-in sheet. So we have a record of attendance. Are there any changes to the agenda today?
Yes, there are changes to the agenda. Item number 6, 10 Still Creek, the applicant has requested a continuance to provide additional time for neighborhood outreach. So that item will be pulled from the agenda and we will renotice that item for an upcoming meeting in January.
Okay.
And then there are desk items related to item number 6. They'll also be included in the future packet. And there is a desk item for item number 5 in which Planner Philippe will address that during her presentation. And the item on consent for 506 Eastview Way, there is a neighbor in attendance that may want to speak on the item, so we can pull that item off consent and allow for public comment, and then the SRB can make its decision at that time.
We don't require a motion on the continuance of still.
No, we're not going to do it to a date certain because we're going to just do renoticing anyway and do new mailing to the neighbors. And so we'll work with the applicant to make sure we nail down the exact date. And that way everyone will just also receive another notice.
Okay. Opportunity for anyone in the public in the room or online who wishes to speak on any item or topic not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline New, and I'm the sister of the applicant of the item number 6 for 10 Still Creek. We just want to express our appreciation for the willingness to postpone. It became apparent that the mail was only delivered, the notice was only delivered late last week as we spoke to our neighbors only over the weekend. So thank you in advance for allowing us to push this item into the new year.
We have no raised hands online.
Okay. As it pertains to the consent agenda, we're going to move that to a regular.
So for the consent agenda, there's 4 items on the agenda. So we can pull item number 4 and move that to the agenda items. And then there's the minutes for July 8th, November 4th, and November 18th. Those can remain on the consent agenda unless there are any members of the ASRB who would like to pull those minutes for discussion.
Does anyone on this board wish to pull any of the minutes? No. Do we need a motion to approve them?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion?
We do. No,
Sorry.
sorry, we had a raised hand, but it went down.
Okay.
Support a motion to.
Yeah, it's just we'd look for a motion to approve items 1 through 3.
Second.
Chair Lindsay. Vice Chair Kamra. Member Middleman.
Yes.
Member Taft.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll begin the public hearing with item number 4.
That's correct.
Great. All right. Let's begin with 506 Eastview Way.
So given that it was on consent, staff doesn't have a presentation, just noting that this item was, it's conceptual design review. It was continued from a previous ASRB meeting with direction for the applicant to address items for formal design review. The conceptual design review was continued to allow the applicant to install story poles with the intent of forwarding formal design review with staff, but given that we have comments from a neighbor, we can allow the neighbor to speak. And about now, if you want to say anything.
Thank you. My name is Jim Chesler. I live at 626 Eastview Way, directly behind 506 Eastview. Lived there for over 40 years, and almost all that time, there was a huge stand of eucalyptus trees behind the neighbor's fence. We barely even knew that the house was there. We couldn't hardly see it. So we were traveling a couple of months ago and we came back and the trees were gone. Now, I don't know, we never got notification. I don't know if they'd notify neighbors for that. They should know, but whether they got a permit or not, I don't know, or even if you have to. These trees were like 75 plus feet tall. I mean, there was a whole line of them. So I was a builder, a home builder for 45 years, and I built several new homes in Woodside. And so I'm not opposed to anybody building their dream home. In fact, I look forward to that. I have two major concerns. First of all, the last ASRB meeting, the representative for the project got up and said that they had contacted all of the neighbors. And in fact, the neighbors were willing to write letters in approval of the project. Well, I'm one of 5 adjoining properties. Not one of them have been notified. So I have one of my neighbors is here today, but our home actually is the one most impacted because the whole length of our property in the back is adjacent to this. And then I have another neighbor on the other side, I think is on Zoom for this meeting, who is also directly affected by it. And I see that we have photos up there. Is it possible if you do the first one with the, I apologize. Oh, good, you got him out of there. That's my grandson, and I didn't know how to take any pictures out, but that is a photo from our backyard 3 years ago, looking toward the house behind us. You can't even see the top of the trees there, but they're very, very tall. So if you could do 2, that'd be great. Do you have a number? Yeah. Okay, so that now is a picture of that house from our back fence. Clearly different, and it impacts. We can see it from our house, we can see it from our pool area, we see it from, the back patio, everywhere. The next one, if you could, I think there's only 3. That's my neighbor's house at 520. And that is also from his fence, looking at the house. You can see the impact that it has visually on our properties. There's two major issues here. One, at least for us, one is the visual siding, that when you get to the landscaping part of their project, if they can do something about, I planted 5 10-foot trees in our backyard, cost $7,000 or something. And because of the slope, they're not going to do anything for 20 years. So our hopes are that they can do something up closer to the home to try to hide that a little bit. But the bigger problem for us is drainage. As you can see, the slope is pretty severe there. So there's 3 of us at the back of that property that really didn't have much issues with drainage. We did have water coming down, but now all those trees are gone. We're really concerned about the drainage issues. So when this project becomes before the ASRB, we would ask that they look at those 2 items, at the landscaping and the drainage. Yep. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that's it, yeah. The tree thing, do you have to get a tree permit to cut trees down in the city?
Yes.
Well, electricity is kind of discriminated against in our town because it's highly flammable. So,
requires a permit.
so it still requires a permit, maybe at no extra charge, but it probably is easily given
Okay, so in
because
the email that I sent, I asked the question, was there a permit taken out? And I never heard anything. And I mean, it's
Well,
ki-
it
kind of
still requires a
irrelevant now
permit.
because they're gone.
So,
But,
yes, so for, as Member Taft noted, a permit is required. Although eucalyptus are called out in the code as ones that are easily issued for permits. And we have confirmed that they did obtain and receive permits to remove the eucalyptus trees. It's pretty common that staff would approve those permits.
But again, I share your sentiment. Those are beautiful trees. It's just too bad they are so flammable.
oh, no, I get that. I'm not opposed to that at all. I was just curious if the neighbors had to be, but just curious more about the permit process. So if we're going to get approved anyway, it doesn't matter, right? No.
But it will, well, first off, we can listen if the applicant is available. They can provide any comments, and then if there's any questions, we can talk further about the item.
Do we know if the applicant is online?
Yes, Veronik.
Oh, there's a specific question.
So we're just asking if you'd like to comment on the item, or you can please unmute yourself. They may not have interest in providing comments.
Question about risk of runoff as a result of removal of trees. Is the civil plan revisited if significant trees are removed?
Yeah, so, if someone's just removing trees in a tree permit, probably not. With a new house, definitely. So at the conceptual design stage, we don't have any preliminary drainage plans, or at least it's not required at this stage. With the formal design review, so even before they get to the building permit stage, they will have to have a preliminary grading and drainage plan, and that will be routed to the engineering department to be looked at. So given that this is kind of also a concern of note, we can pay extra attention to it. And planning staff can also communicate the concerns to the engineering department when they review that preliminary plan.
Similarly with landscape.
That's correct. Yes, the landscape plan isn't required at this stage, but we do take these comments under note. As the neighbor stated, sometimes putting trees right up against the property line isn't going to be the most effective screening. So it might need to have some combination of landscaping near the property line and closer to the house to provide some more effective landscaping. We can also look at the timing of the installation of landscaping. So first look at a landscape plan to see if it can provide at least some adequate screening that can fill in, definitely over the years, but what we can do immediately to screen the site. And then also looking at, once that landscape plan is approved, the ability for the applicant to try to install some landscaping, if not all of it, in this area as soon as possible to give it a chance to start to grow and thrive throughout the construction process. Sometimes things very close to the construction area wouldn't be installed to the very end just because they'd be disturbed. But especially if there's stuff further away from the construction area, we can work with the applicant to try to get that stuff installed as soon as possible, and possibly even before they get their building permits for the house itself.
In terms of process for this particular item, because we moved it from consent agenda, should we try to adhere to how we would normally handle?
Yeah, so it's just pulled off consent. So it's the ability for the ASRB to comment on it. At the last meeting, the ASRB provided comments for the applicant to address. One was to work with staff to determine if a lot merger is necessary. And the second was to provide a landscape plan, including but not limited to landscape screen of neighboring properties and fence and gate designs that are consistent with the residential design guidelines. The ASRB can add on to that. We could clarify, with the landscape plan to provide timing of installation. But the ASRB can opine on that and make any modifications deemed necessary.
Was this application going to come back to us for formal?
So the idea was that given that story poles would be installed, it was the decision of the ASRB to have it forwarded to staff. ASRB can, that's not a given. Story polls go up, things are seen, and so the ASRB could make a different recommendation to bring the whole project back. We have seen in the past, sometimes just to bring the landscape plan back. That's really the main issue outstanding here. So we could bring it back with the entire package, or if the ASRB is just really wants to focus on the landscaping plan, wants to bring that back, we could make that a condition. Sure.
Well,
You
we
could-
were contacted from you guys for the SRB telling us about that situation, but the first time we didn't know about it. I didn't know about it, but we certainly never talked to the agent for the property.
Looking at, to describe any neighborhood outreach and specific to the project, but most notably the landscape, to discuss landscape screening. And it sounds like the applicant may have some input at this time, so we can let them speak.
Sorry, is the applicant online and willing to, or wishing to speak?
It's a little hard to hear you. Can you speak up? The voice is muffled and a little low. You turn up your microphone or?
We'll have to move on. So just to clarify again, the last meeting we reviewed this, we'd agreed to move forward with staff. Now we want to call out specific items as part of the formal review process to come back to the ASRB.
Yeah, so that was the recommendation at the last hearing, was that they install story poles with the intent of going to staff with formal design review. But that decision now is to be made today.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, we'll try again. Did the applicant wish to speak?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Sorry, very sorry. Yes, I was, we didn't propose any landscaping plan at this stage because the owner wanted to wait financially, and do the landscape at a later date. So is it a requirement to provide the landscaping with the remodeling and addition?
So to answer the question, a landscape plan is required at the formal design review stage. So what the ASRB is contemplating, whether or not the landscape plan would come back to the ASRB for review, or if it would be to be reviewed by staff, but it is required at the next stage.
Okay. So no, so that's why we didn't propose any landscape at this point. But correct. Okay. Thank you.
Any more discussion or prepared to make a motion?
Before we do the motion, just one qualifying question.
Okay.
Just to understand the general context, the removal of the eucalyptus trees exacerbated the drainage problem. Is that what our understanding?
Well, the removal of the trees certainly was the visual part.
Visual,
because Now
yes.
the house is right in our
Yes.
face, but concern that the trees are gone now
Right.
is an added concern about the drainage coming off that slope, yes,
So these are two separate issues.
correct.
And then one clarification, when the eucalyptus trees were removed, did the applicant get any partial reimbursement by the town for removal of the trees?
is that relevant?
If they were fire danger, presented fire danger, then it is, then the town subsidizes it.
Right, but why is that relevant?
So if, I think, in all honesty, it adds another interesting angle to this. So if it was the case, it's even more so, there should be a way to encourage resolution of this problem. Whether it's landscaping done on your property, which screens the house, or it is on the property which belongs to the applicant.
Yeah. Well, it would be much better if it was done on the applicant side up on their slope to try to hide.
It's a separate issue where
Okay,
it's
yeah, yeah,
better,
yeah.
but it adds extra angle to this kind of interesting situation, because everyone is right.
No problem. Just one more comment. Being familiar with the process of, it says in the application, it's either a remodel or a new construction. My guess is after they go through all of the inspections on the house, it's gonna end up being a new build, which is fine. But the story polls say that it's gonna be higher than the existing house is now. So that's gonna even impact us more, so just a comment there.
Paige, how much higher was it than the previous house? I thought it was,
I'm sorry, what's the question?
what was the difference in height between the existing and the new?
I had a comment that I'd made on the last review of ridge height of 17 feet, so it was right at
Yeah.
the limit.
So they're showing a proposed height at 28 feet tall.
What's the difference between it?
Okay, we'll pull up the.
I think the important points here is we've captured the need for a review by the ASW of landscape plan as part of formal.
So existing, sorry, existing height was 17.7 feet. And now it's supposed to be 28.1.
10 feet tall.
What I was gonna propose was, I think it would be fair to ask.
No, I'm sorry. The total size is 19 feet.
We're having trouble hearing you again.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the propose is 19 feet point one. Is absolutely not the 10 feet taller.
All right, so that's a difference of 2.1 feet. Well, regardless, I think what you were about to propose was what I was about to propose, which I think we should have the landscape plan come back to us for review in a public hearing. Make sure everybody's happy with it.
And as far as the landscape plan, there's nothing new for a professional builder, but maybe let's mention this, that if it's appropriate to put bamboo in to screen, it's probably the fastest way, but then you have a problem to control because it's an invasive species.
Yeah.
But it's as you probably well know, it's the fastest way to screen that situation.
Whatever they decide to do, as long as it kind of makes it go away a little bit more, that'd be great.
So Kay goes in a show here on the downhill side, this kind of daylight basement area or this lower level. So that adds the overall height of it. And so they show it at 17.7, plus here another 8 feet. So that is the existing, and the proposed is at 19 plus the 8 feet. So there's a 2-foot difference. It goes from about 26 to about 28 feet tall. On the very tallest part of the building, which is the two-story side.
We'll comment that that section has no window exposure. So it should be a pretty dark piece of the house at night. But I motion that I do trust staff to review a civil plan to ensure that the drainage is covered. I motion that we have a landscape plan come back to us for review.
You have a motion?
Would that just be a consent?
It would be up to the ASRB. We can bring it back on consent, and if you want to pull it, you can pull it. If not, it can.
I would propose that.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah, if we need to pull it, we can pull it.
Amend that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And so just to clarify for all involved, the ASRB is recommending that staff complete the formal design review. And the applicant will come back to the ASRB just to review the landscape plan, and I'll include to describe any continued neighborhood outreach at that time. And so the neighbors would be notified of that ASRB meeting once that landscape plan is prepared and ready for review by the ASRB.
And the timing of that would be where in the formal?
Sure. So they can submit just their landscape plan first and have that come back as soon as they're ready for that. They could prepare it as part of their formal package, and as that package is still maybe being reviewed for other items, we could just bring back the landscape plan. So it'd be up to the applicant when they're ready to provide the detailed landscape plan.
So Sage, just to clarify, the landscape, you're including the drainage in that, or is that part of the engineering, the civil engineering drawings?
But the ASRB is indicating that that would come back to the staff would be reviewing that.
Okay.
So with all of that, when it all comes back in, you could be notified, and you're welcome to look at the plans and provide any input as well at
Okay,
that time.
cool. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Happy holidays to everyone.
Yep.
Likewise.
We have a motion and a second.
And I'm sorry, we've had a hand raised then lowered several times. I just want to make sure no one online wants to make a comment on this. If you wish to make a comment, can you please raise your hand? No raised hands.
10 seconds. All right, we'll move on.
So yeah, no, we have a motion and a second. We just need a vote on that.
Chair Lindsay, Vice Chair Comra, Member Middleman,
Yes.
and Member Taft.
Yes.
Great, so that concludes that item, and we'll send out the action letter to the applicant and the neighbors, and we will bring back the landscape plan for further review when it's prepared.
Thank you again.
Okay. Moving on to the real public hearing. With first item 5, 3100 Woodside Road. Sarah's presenting.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So I will be introducing the project at 3100 Woodside Road. So the project includes the demolition of an existing residence and attached garage, as well as converting an existing ADU into a pool house, retaining an existing ADU and detached garage, as well as constructing a new main residence with a detached garage, detached ADU, a greenhouse, and a gym, as well as other site improvements. So the property is 3 acres, and it's in the RR zoning district. The site's located on Woodside Road, adjacent to Kenyatta Corners. So the new main residence will be located in the same general location as the existing. Let me go to a site plan, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so new main residence will be located in this area. So it's basically the same location as the existing residence. There will be a detached 4-car garage located here, as well as a detached ADU, and that's this structure here. This is a gym, and then lastly, this is the greenhouse. The greenhouse is more than 250 square feet and will therefore require a conditional use permit. And so that will be reviewed at a future planning commission hearing with their formal design review application. All of these other structures on site, so this existing ADU, an existing garage, and another ADU here, as well as some accessory structures, those are all proposed to remain. One thing to note is the applicant indicated that this existing ADU here was going to be converted to just a pool house. So removing, I forget what component, but converting it from an ADU to just like an accessory structure. But one thing that I wanted to bring up is that there's some upcoming ADU changes that are going to require, or going to allow lots to have 3 detached ADUs. So potentially something that applicant might want to consider is not having to convert it. So we can talk about that with their formal application. Surprise. So the existing driveway will remain in its current location with some minor adjustments, and that's here in this this corner of the property. So they're going to make some adjustments to create more of like an auto court with guest parking and a fire truck turnaround. The applicant is proposing to remove approximately 13 trees, 9 of which are considered significant. There are some trees that appear to be within the right-of-way. They're proposed to be removed because either they're within the area that's being developed or they're in poor health, according to the arborist report. So the height of the residence will be approximately 28.5 feet tall at its highest point at the 2-story point. It is mostly a single story with a modest 2-story. The residence and ADU design will be similar in style and materials, and they'll also match the existing accessory structures that are on site and proposed to remain. So the materials will be natural stone veneer siding with barrel tile roofs. And then the detached garage. So that's, sorry, finding it on the plans. Detached garage, as well as the gym. So the gym is these 4 images here. They will be vertical board and batten wood siding with corrugated metal roofs. And then the greenhouse will have a stone veneer base. That's these images down here with glass walls and roofs. Lastly, we did get a desk item. It's from the property owners just expressing their weren't available to come to the meeting tonight, but they wanted to send an email with their remarks. So that's was included. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, just to clarify, so with the ADUs, When this report was written, there was a proposed ordinance in play for allowing additional ADUs on properties. And at that time, it was proposed to allow 2 detached and 1 attached, as well as 1 junior accessory dwelling unit. And this last Tuesday night, the council reviewed that ordinance as it came from the planning commission, and they introduced the ordinance with a change to allow for those 3 ADUs to be attached or detached. So they provided more flexibility. And therefore, now the applicant has the ability to have, the ordinance still needs to go through a second reading, which will occur in January, but given the introduction from the town council on Tuesday night, it's possible that the applicant could retain 3 detached ADUs.
The only additional thing is that they would have to find one more spot for parking, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we'll double check the parking waiver situation. Sometimes those apply, but yes, worst case scenario would require 1 more parking space.
The town still waiving permit fees for ADUs?
Yes.
Is a good motivation.
Is there
Not a physical board, but I do have a sheet here that shows some.
are all the structures to or it sounds like there are 2 different types of buildings or everything have the same stone, same roof, any of those.
So the main residence and the ADU will have this same stone veneer siding with the tile roof. And then the gym and the detached garage will have, it'll be different. It'll be board and batten wood siding with metal roof.
And the applicant can speak to that a little bit more. Sometimes what we see with projects is people providing these different accessory structures to kind of give the feel of like kind of agrarian outbuildings. And so whereas those may not always particularly match the specific style of the residence, but the applicant can best speak to that. That's correct.
Does anyone have questions for? What variances would be required for this, if any?
Nothing at this time that I was able to decipher from the plans. They're not asking for a resident size exception. No variance to setbacks or anything like that. So nothing that I saw.
Okay.
Things could change with more information, but I don't think there will be any variances.
Really, conceptual use permit.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The conceptual use permit for the greenhouse, that is one entitlement, yes.
That's not variance, because it's still smaller than the size of the accessory.
Yeah. It's just a conditional use in the code, so it require, if it's more than 250 square feet, so it just requires that planning commission level review.
No lot coverage exception.
No, in the report, I kind of described it a little bit, but their existing paved area and surface coverage is slightly over what's their maximum is, so they'll have to do a reduction. So they will do that, but it doesn't require a variance or an exception.
My question, curiosity, can that hardscape be reduced through a permeable paving?
No, it still counts as paved area and surface coverage, any sort of permeable paving, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, at this point, we invite the applicant to make a presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here with you again. You probably saw the desk item, but Laura and Tori couldn't be here this evening, but they're very excited about their project. They've lived here over a decade. They actually pursued and built the guest house and pool house. It's strange watching myself up there versus the drawings, just so that's a new. But they built those back when they were, I think, called ALQs and actually went through ASRB at that time. So they established when they moved in the property, they worked on that lower part that faces, you know, Village and Bucks and the creek, has that expansive view. And so they did the pool house, the pool, the guest house, and then actually when you enter the property, there's a garage that has the board and batten, the corrugated metal roof. And so now, 10 years later, we're working on the main house in the existing location, and we're going to pivot off the materials that are already established. I'm hoping to maybe bring some little updates on some things that, you know, maybe we could enhance from what was done, you know, back when those were built. But otherwise, the palette's pretty great with natural materials and, you know, warm earth tones. It kind of blends in. So we're going to play off that. And you know, you can, when you look at the existing main house, and maybe you could pull up the site plan just to show the layout there. We have a very small area to work with when we're looking at doing a main house. And, you know, one of the big attributes Laura and Tori are interested in, you can see the expansive grounds if you went there, the gardening and the, you know, cooking, and that's one of their passions. And so you can also see this in the main house and how it's broken up and decentralized. We have this great courtyard filled with olive trees, going to be an outdoor dining table. We're going to expand and focus the attention towards the pool. We're going to keep the orthogonal layout from Woodside Road. And what this is going to do is, in mainly being a single story, is it's going to minimize the view and the bulk in the way we oriented the gable roofs, you know, 90 degrees to Woodside Road. So when you're looking up from there, you're not really going to see much of a house at all. And that partial 2-story portion, it's kind of pushed into the hillside. At its highest point of measurement, we are at 28 feet, but it's really not going to read at that height if you're looking at the elevations and the grading. But yeah, that's the farthest away from the public realm. And so it's more a scattering of buildings to break down that massing, but more to enhance those indoor-outdoor spaces is really our focus. And what is basically an established site, the landscape architect is coming in and hoping to enhance and play off some of those existing features as well. And just to touch on a few more, you know, minor points that were brought up. That's great that I did not know the new ADU ordinance. We were proposing the shower be removed, so technically it would not count as an ADU. It was an ALQ, it counted back then. That pool house is not used for living purposes. It's purely for cooking, and it facilitates the pool use. The guest house is used as an actual ADU. So I guess that would be a benefit if the shower in there can remain, but it really doesn't impact the project itself. The owners did do their own personal neighbor outreach to all adjacent neighbors. There's only really 3 that touch the property. So the one next door, and if you went to the adjacent building survey, back when we started this, there was actually another, I think, ADU built next door. So there should be 3. Yeah, kind of if you went right where the cursor is right in there, there's another new structure that was recently finished. So in coordination with that neighbor, it was positive. They just were interested in, you know, mutually screening between the properties, and we show that on the landscape plan. The project on Prospect back up there, same thing. No real comments or issues. I think they're actually going to coordinate and do a walk with the owner in an upcoming weekend, but again, just more screening interest. And then they met across Woodside Road, next to the firehouse right there. And again, you know, no real issues, just because it's not going to be too much of a change from what's already there. We didn't install story poles. As you can see, this application is fairly well to a formal level in what's in here in terms of grading, landscape, materials. Because of the greenhouse having to go to Planning Commission, we're going to install the story poles because we have to come back here for formal anyway. So just to reduce the amount of lead time that those story poles would be up. So they'll go up at formal because they need to be up for Planning Commission as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions about various elevations. I was struggling to map the different facades and the glazing, primarily to the purpose of trying to assess whether those walls with the most glazing were outwards facing or inwards facing to other structures. And perhaps you could just walk through some of these and help me understand
Yeah, so if
how
you
they're
were-
oriented.
Yeah, if you were to pull up A5, that actually might help you the best looking at the floor plan. And I can kind of guide you just in terms. So if we're going to the large living space to the top of the screen, so there's a bank of doors facing the south of the page right there that faces that interior courtyard that is pretty well concealed by the opposite structure and the grove of olive trees that aren't shown on the floor plan, but along that kind of interior courtyard. And then screened from Woodside Road with the greenhouse, the ADU kind of entry court and garage. So it is meant to be private on that side. On the opposite side, that's the one where it's elevated slightly above the pool, but then you have the layer of mature trees, the creek before you get to the parking lot and Bucks and, you know, all that commercial mobility. Otherwise, I wouldn't say there's a substantial amount. Those are the big two you're probably seeing. Oh, the other one to the left side of that living space up there, that's almost partially below grade. That area, that's the one portion of cut. So if you were cross-referencing to the elevations, it's a partial below grade area. So again, that's not going to be seen really from anyone. Oh, and I will add one other little anecdote to the tree removal, the 13 trees. So I think 9 of them, if we were counting it, maybe it's 7. They are along Woodside Road. They are identified as dead or in poor health by the arborist. And so I actually posed the question to staff, what is the process? We would like to retain screening. There are some plantings and we're happy to facilitate on the property side, but just how those are handled, whether it's to the property owner or in coordination with the town. But otherwise, there are 3 that are related to the project. You can see those to the left side of the screen. And then the upper right side, those ones are dead up by the guest house.
Obviously, from the ASRB's perspective, you know, our interest is preserving trees, but primarily preserving privacy, greening. So.
Yeah, there's no need for us to remove the ones along Woodside Road, and we love the screen. So it's more maybe just an FYI to town or everyone involved as we're working on this project.
Arguably, if they're dead.
In poor health, I mean, whoever, I don't know who at the town reviews that as well to determine. I know I've worked on isolated right-of-way trees before, but I'm sure we'll figure it out if eventually in the process.
Okay.
Either way, we'd like to retain screening. If those are gone, they're, you know, coming off the project we just saw, we would definitely want to keep screening from Woodside Road.
Any other questions for the?
Yes, just a quick question. At the bottom of this drawing, it looks like one of the ADUs is indeed very close to the property line. Is it indeed 4 feet separation or is it more than 4 feet?
I believe we're at 12 feet. Yeah, not 4 feet.
Again, at the bottom. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
So
right,
I mean, theoretically, ADU can come as close as 4 feet. So here you're staying 12 feet away, which is kind of your goodwill, which is good.
it also just works with the site. You can see that kind of rock wall that's existing. Right now,
Okay,
there's
yeah.
lawn that kind of meanders to that realm. So it was more working off that and then what's happening on the opposite side with, I think, the opposing ADU at the neighbors.
Thank you for this clarification. So then this is one area where screening is probably more critical.
Yeah, and it's proposed on the landscape site plan along that line in between those existing trees. There's, yes, there you can see it to the left.
Thank you.
I read that roughly an 8-foot grade shift from where the ADU sits to the property boundary, that retained by that stone wall.
Yeah.
Plus there's another 6-7 foot fence.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess the outstanding question is, who's responsible for the trees in the right of way? If they're dead, they should be replaced.
This is a Caltrans right of way. This is Highway 84. And
yes.
so it would just, the owners can talk to Public Works and, if something's necessary to be removed, that can be coordinated with Public Works and then ultimately Caltrans.
It sounds like arguably what is the probable thing that'll happen is that if they are to be removed, future screening would have to be put on the property itself.
Correct, unless they get some encroachment permit approval from Caltrans.
Okay. I think, even though the overall intent is to work off of the materials from the existing ADUs or ADU and pool house, you did mention something about bringing something new to the project. So, understanding what if any of those are involved, new colors, new materials, new textures, then it would be nice to hear you speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, less to the materials and more just the detailing of eaves and some of the headers and head heights. So little things that probably have more my interest than yours, but the material palette is to match.
Okay, good.
Is the applicant expecting to add solar to the project in the future?
Solar will be required with a new home, so it will have to be added. And should.
Is that part of the formal process at that point?
It's really part of the building permit process. As so solar is not something that we can require design review on. It just has to meet health and safety standards per state law. So there, especially if you're building, it's easier to integrate into the tile roofs than if you're trying to install on an existing tile roof.
Great. Oh, I commend you on building off what has been established as the existing aesthetic of the other structures, rather than trying to introduce something new and different, which is sort of the current condition of the property. All right. Any other?
I was really surprised when I drove into the lot. I mean, you don't expect
I know.
that. I mean, I was expecting one of those little bitty lots that you usually see, even though I knew it was 3 acres. It was shocking. It was a gorgeous lot, and I can see they've taken a long time to, I mean, I'm sure they've always envisioned the main house looking like the others, but they've, had to work on them in pieces. And, I mean, those olive trees there are just absolutely spectacular. No, I think it's a beautiful project, and I commend you on putting it all together with I mean, it's very complete even at this stage.
It's a beautiful property. It's hidden and it's right next to town center. Go figure.
Okay, there are no more comments or questions for the applicant. I will open up to public hearing. I don't think there's anyone in the room, but perhaps online.
We have one raised hand online. Tori Rothstein.
Yeah, hello, you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, we're property owners next door, 3110 Woodside Road. Just want to voice support for the project. We look forward to the story polls, and we appreciate the offer for as much of the screening on their side as they've put forward in the landscape plans, and also that they do have that 12-foot cushion for that ADU when only 4 is required. So just wanted to voice support on our end.
Thank you. Anyone else? No hands raised.
No other hands raised.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Move to board discussion. Who'd like to kick us off? All right, I'll look the other way too.
Guys. Yeah, mostly I think it's a beautiful project. It's conservative. It specs what's there. It talks to the site and to the existing structures and, you know, I was debating on, you know, how to move forward with either, you know, as a consent item for formal or to see it with for formal considering its location and proximity in the town center. And I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that I'm struggling with that question on how I feel about the project because it's complete. They've done neighborhood outreach. They've come to agreements with the neighbors. It seems like anything will be addressed as they move forward to formal. Yeah.
I'm in full support of the project to just move it on to, I would be very happy to move it on to your office. Like, I don't see any worrying from that fact.
I think we have to do that because it has to go to.
We can talk about the options. Well, I think, yeah, we'll get all the comments and I'll outline how that can work.
It appears to be well thought through and will be beautiful compound.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I echo the comments of my fellow members. Quite an elegant project. Very extensive in terms of building a compound. Personally, I also see no need to come back to ASRB, but our options are.
Sure. So because the project has to go to planning commission, story poles are required for planning commission review. And so what we've seen on other projects that are similar to this, if the applicant were to put story poles up now, it still may take them, you know, several months to get their package together, to get their application deemed complete, to get scheduled for planning commission. And so especially when you're living on site, you're either putting story poles up at a cost and taking them down and putting them back up, or you're trying to navigate your life with story poles on site for a very extended period of time. So therefore, what we've heard tonight is that the ASRB commends the applicant for the project design to be compatible with the existing structures that fits within the property's topography, as well as utilizing a similar footprint of the existing home to reduce the development impact. So with that, there weren't any comments for recommendations for project changes. So therefore, the ASRB could continue this conceptual design review with the intent of the applicant putting up story poles. And this is how this would work, is that the applicant would submit their formal design review application still with the hanging out there conceptual design review. And when that application is ready to move forward, they could install story poles. We come back to ASRB on consent. It's pulled off consent. There can be a discussion at that time. If it's passed on consent, then the applicant just moves directly on to Planning Commission within a couple of weeks after that ASRB meeting, therefore limiting the time of story poles. So essentially what you would be doing is continuing the conceptual design review, direction for the applicant to install story poles with the intent of sending the formal design review to Planning Commission.
Great guidance as always. Your support? All right.
So, there you go. Yes.
And I'll second that.
Does someone want to make that motion?
I think Member Comra made the motion and Member Middleman seconded it.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Comra, Member Middleman,
Yes.
and Member Taft.
Yes.
Great. Nice work.
Be in touch.
Okay. Close the public hearing and we have no director's reports.
No, the only thing I'll just report on is the Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday night has been postponed, so there will not be a Planning Commission meeting this Wednesday. What was scheduled to review conversions of barns into ADUs. In speaking with town manager, we've looked at it closer and we're just trying to make sure that there's enough time to provide the appropriate amount of analysis given the holiday break. And so we'll be bringing that item to the Planning Commission in January.
I will adjourn the meeting at 5:30 p.m.
Happy holidays, and this is the last meeting of the year. Yep.